because they couldn't understand why I would leave. I was a very zealous, active witness. So if I were to turn around and go back, they would just say that I had mental illness. They most likely would accept me back, but I'm sure that there would be judgment and marking. Marking is when you label somebody in the organization as bad association. I'm sure there would be gossip and judgment. It would be interesting.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Truth That Heals podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Anthony Hernandez, and today our special guest is Correen Hardin, who has written her memoir, Best Life After. Correen, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and I recently saw that you had a memoir come out, and my eyes just sparkled, and I got to seeing your life journey a bit through social media, and that's why you're here on this show. So welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
So something that stood out to me was that you are expressing in your memoir a bit about your life, and I see that you have involvements in high control groups, religion, cults, and me myself being a survivor of this kind of lifestyle, I really felt that it is important to hear voices like yours.
Yeah, I wrote this. I didn't even know that I was writing it until I had like 80 poems because I left Jehovah's Witnesses. I was in their religion for 7 years, and I left them in early 2024, and it was such a scary experience leaving them. There was lots of panic attacks, so I was writing all this poetry to cope with it. And then I just realized I had almost written a book, so I decided to add my memoirs and the whole why I got in it and why I left it.
Well, to get started and really diving into this interview of exploring your journey, I would like to explore how you even got involved in the first place. Were you born into this, or was it something that you were recruited into later on in life?
So I have a weird beginning because I wasn't born into it, but my mother was a witness before I was born. So my grandma Pam on my father's side was the first one to become a witness in the 70s. And she taught my mother, and my mother was in and out. And a lot of the book is about my childhood trauma. I had really bad parents. So I knew about Jehovah's Witnesses my whole life. And my sister became a witness when she was 18. She kept trying to get me to be in it. But it wasn't until I was 32 that I actually joined it.
Was there something that just really attracted you to this movement?
Well, it was a combination of I was very depressed at the time. I was very hopeless. I had been like, I've had dealt with suicidal, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but I've dealt with suicidal feelings for a lot of my adult life. So I was very lost. My sister was sending them to my house constantly, and it just ended up being like perfect timing. And I personally feel like I was always wanting to find a God, wanting to feel like I was good enough because I had never been good enough as a child. So I just feel like I fell for the lie of working to be worthy of love. And uh Jehovah's Witnesses really are all about that. This is what you can do for God to love you.
And what were some things that really attracted you to it, especially in the beginning?
Well, they put up a really good image. They are very much about their perfect image and how they look to the public because they're supposed to be representing Jehovah's name. So they're very fundamentalist, very rigid, and they follow the Bible like to a T. I've now since learned they go beyond the scriptures, but they just looked like they were very zealous, loving people, trying to give their best to God, trying to be a good example, especially because, like, for me with mainstream, I say mainstream Christianity to differentiate. Sometimes it felt like they didn't really have to do anything but just say that they were saved. There was no requirements, and I just felt like I had to do something to be worthy.
Was there a time when you experienced or you witnessed something that was a red flag?
It was just over time that I started to question why you had to work this hard, why you had to suffer so much. I actually didn't belong to a unkind congregation. The people in my congregation were very wonderful people. It was just the load, the constant shame, the constant fear mongering. Every single meeting was a new list of things that you needed to be ashamed for, and more things you needed to be afraid of, and more things you needed to be doing. And I started to question all of that.
When was the moment that you really felt that you were experiencing serious doubts?
Well, I had doubts coming up, but I was still depressed. So I was depressed when I joined the organization. And then being in the organization only exasperated it. It didn't make it better. And I was immune to exercise and diet and medicine helping me. So I was willing to try something wild. I ended up trying ketamine therapy. I figured I couldn't be very much of a good witness if I wasn't still on the planet. So I figured my options were I'm going to not be able to keep going or I'm going to have to get this therapy. And when I took the therapy, it doesn't allow you to keep your doubts down anymore. It makes you look at yourself more without the emotion attached, and you're able to see a little bit clearly. And that's when all the doubts just, I say, bubbled up like vomit. Like I could not hold them down. I really started questioning everything hard. And that was like December 2023, when that happened.
Is there something that you questioned specifically that really maybe uh shook you up?
Specifically, again, it was just the conditional love. It was the shame and the fear. And actually, I would say, as a mother, I started comparing the way that I love my children to the way that supposedly Jehovah loved me. And his love was just not adding up because I would never put such a heavy load on my children and I would never hurt my children or give them an ultimatum.
So I myself have not been involved in the Jehovah Witnesses, but uh, for someone like me who isn't aware, uh, how would you define the love of Jehovah back then as a witness, and now how would you define it?
How would I define what I thought his love was?
Yes, back then, and if you were still in the cult, how would you, if someone were to ask you, you're still in the Jehovah Witnesses, and someone were to ask you, how do you define Jehovah's love? How would you define it back then, and how would you define it now that you're out?
Okay, well, I would definitely say that at that time I felt like I had horse blinders because there was definitely a lot of things I wasn't questioning. But at the time I was like, oh God is, Jehovah's love. He'll never give up on us. If our foot is slipping, he'll help us. We're supposed to like fight Satan and the demons for him. They're constantly out to get us, but this is just what we're doing. We're restoring his reputation because Satan and the demons have slandered it and people have slandered it. So all that suffering, slaving, it has a reason. And I was motivated and I thought Jehovah was in my corner. Um, but then I realized that the suffering was never ending. And I just started to realize that it wasn't loving because he would give up on me. If I failed, if Satan and the demons were successful in stumbling me, then that was going to be on me. And he would basically let me be destroyed. And that was just confounding to me as a mother.
And today, how do you define the love? Now, what is your perspective of it?
I would say that Jehovah's love is narcissistic and it is conditional because he very much, if you believe he operates the way the Jehovah's Witnesses say he does, he wants our praise. He wants our servitude. He wants us to carve ourselves up into this perfect image. He doesn't really accept us. And he is making us fight his battles. He's making us fight Satan and the demons. Um, and all these things really represent, if you put this in human context, like a human parent expecting these things from from their child, you would automatically recognize this is toxic and unhealthy behavior. Um, but yeah, and his love is just ultimately conditional. If you fail, when he didn't even set you up for success, when he didn't even protect you from his worst enemy, it's on you if you fail, if you give up. if the suffering gets to you and you're like, I can't do it anymore. They have a saying, the one who endures to the end will be saved. So basically, if you don't endure, well, it's tough luck for you. You know what I mean? And that just was very heartbreaking. I would say that I had to actually grieve the God that I thought that he was because I had this idea of what kind of loving father he was, the love that I always wanted, and then realized he was just as bad as my human parents were, worse, you know?
Sadly, there are some groups or kingdom halls, you call it,
Yeah.
or churches or sects where they really are just like domineering and they really abuse the members. But it sounds like in your experience, it was really quite friendly and for the most part. Uh,
That's what, yeah, that's what makes it so challenging is because you're getting this underlying message on top of this other, like it's both positive and negative. It makes it very difficult to see clearly what is happening.
yes, it's like a layer that I mean,
Yes,
it's like a
but yeah, but absolutely, there's so much fear and shame constantly at every meeting, and that was the thing that really got to me is every meeting it's like you shouldn't be watching these shows, you shouldn't be listening to these music, you shouldn't be letting your kids join sports, you shouldn't be socializing with anybody at work, you should be going out in service more, you should be making sure you're doing family worship. Like it was just, it got me to where I was constantly terrified of doing something to upset Jehovah. Like waking up in the middle of the night in a panic. What have I done now to upset him? You know, like I would eat a steak, and if it was too rare, I'd panic and think that I ate blood because you're not supposed to consume blood if you're a Jehovah's Witness. Like it was in every aspect of my life, the fear.
for you when you were ready to leave and you're making this transition, because many cults are known for shunning. Did you at any point experience this?
Oh, yes, absolutely. My sister, when I told her of my doubts and what I was going through, she cut me out of her life before I was even in trouble because she said that she couldn't risk, she said my doubts were giving her doubts and she couldn't deal with that because she needs to save her daughter at Armageddon. And so she cut me off. And then, of course, I've experienced several occasions where I bumped into people. Actually, just yesterday, I bumped into somebody, and they just look through you like you don't exist. The lady yesterday, it was weird. I was in line for subs, and she came up behind me, and she just got really close to me and stared at me. And so finally I was like, I don't know, does she want me to say something? So I turned and I was like, I just wanted you to know that I recognize you and I know you're not supposed to talk to me, but I hope you're doing well. And then she just laughed at me. And I was like, okay, well, that's nice.
Wow, she laughed at you. As your experiences when you first left, when you're making that transition, how did you feel in the beginning? I know right now you were able to have that courage to even talk to this person, but as you were first experiencing it, what was going on through your mind and in your heart?
When it came to my sister, I was sad, heartbroken that she would not gain every single minute that she could have with me. Um, but at the same time, I kind of understood her fear. And honestly, at the time, I wasn't even sure if I was on the right path. I was begging Jehovah to take my life before I stumbled anybody. So I had a lot of fear and panic. So I kind of felt like I deserved it. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want to stumble anybody else. I didn't want to take anybody else down with me. So I had a lot of mixed emotions about it.
What is their view about regarding ex-members? Like, is there a chance that they can still be saved in the Armageddon, or is it like as soon as you're out, like you're outcast?
So if you leave and you remain quiet, then you can come back. But if you leave and you speak out against them, you're an unforgivable apostate. That means that you have committed the only sin that God will not forgive. It's kind of funny how that works, right? Like how convenient that it keeps the victims from speaking up out of terror that they're going to lose their eternal lives. Now, saying that, I think that if I tried to go back, they've apparently already created a narrative that I went mental, because they couldn't understand why I would leave. I was a very zealous, active witness. So if I were to turn around and go back, they would just say that I had mental illness. They most likely would accept me back, but I'm sure that there would be judgment and marking. Marking is when you label somebody in the organization as bad association. I'm sure there would be gossip and judgment. It would be interesting.
Yeah. How did you reconstruct or redefine yourself after leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses?
Um, one of the first things I did was when I knew I wasn't going back was start getting my tattoos. I know they say that that's what everybody does, but I was like, I have to reclaim my autonomy. This is my body, and I have been, letting them tell me how to wear my hair, how to dress, and how to be and how to live. And so I'm taking this back in a way that everybody can see. If I walk past a Jehovah's Witness and they see the sleeve and the neck tattoos, they're like, okay, she's definitely saying that her body belongs to her. But it wasn't just that. It was I focused more on understanding what I don't believe rather than coming up with a whole new set of beliefs. Um, I think I've been humbled because Jehovah's Witnesses think that they're the only ones that know the truth. And now I think the beliefs that I take in, I hold very loosely with an open mind because I don't think that we can necessarily have all the answers. Um, and I just stick to what I do know. I don't accept fear or shame. I don't accept performance for love. I compare a belief against what I know as somebody who does love, and I focus on the love part of it, I guess. I've redefined myself by living my life showing love to myself with the decisions that I make and showing love to other human beings.
And upon leaving, what was the jump like from being in the Kingdom Hall to going back into the world? Was there a fear that you have? And if so, how did you break that fear?
Well, it was very strange to consider that the end wasn't tomorrow because I spent 7 years thinking the end was tomorrow. So that meant you never really thought of yourself as growing old. You never thought of yourself having grandchildren or having life. And suddenly that had opened up to me again, and it was surreal. The other thing was that I had so much time on my hands. I had been so busy in this organization, and suddenly I had all this freed up time, and it constantly felt like I was forgetting something. I constantly would have this feeling like I'd forgotten something important. So there was a lot of anxiety. And also, like I said, I was still deconstructing a lot of the fear and shame that they put on me. So I was waking up with panic attacks. I was having panic attacks night and day for months. It took a long time, and being on XJW, X cult community on social media to help me break down those fears to where I could get through a day and a week without panicking.
When did your poetry start?
Um, the poetry for this book started when I started having the doubts and I started facing them. I had to put them into some kind of words that made sense of it all. And I really feel like they're raw and emotional and really get in on the cognitive dissonance and just the emotion of it all, the deconstruction process.
Is there a poem that you can share with us?
Yeah, I've got one here. It's called Jesus Sacrifice is Free. It says, did you ever think Jesus' sacrifice actually was free? That there was no cross for us to bear, for him to rescue you and me? Perhaps the men who wanted control said this will never do. How can we rule and own mankind? Fear must be the view. If we make them earn God's love, make them fear their death, we can get them to do anything. They'll pay their dying breath. The scriptures say, don't add a word and do not take away. Maybe that's because they did, to enslave us to their way. And so Jesus again surely weeps to see us doubt God's love, as if God is a human parent, a narcissistic one. Most of us are doing the very best we can, Surely a loving God can see and won't destroy us with his hand.
Can you share with us what it was like writing specifically that poem and the story behind it?
For that poem, I was just questioning the idea that God destroys us at all or that he requires suffering from us. Because for me personally, I I always say that people have to take this experience that I had through their own beliefs. You can say it was psychosis, if you're an atheist. You can say it was demons if you're mainstream Christian and you think Jehovah's Witnesses are a cult. And you can say that it's entities or whatever. But I, being in this organization, experienced weird things, nightmares, sleep paralysis, my body jerks, and it was very scary. I write about it in the book. And the witnesses told me, "Oh, you've been chosen to fight in God's angels, the demon." They didn't say go see a doctor. They said you've been chosen to fight these battles with the demons and you have to endure. But the problem was it lasted the whole 7 years that I was in the organization. And at some point I was like, what do you mean I have to suffer for God? Like, why is he asking this of me? It didn't make sense. And the part about we all have to take up our cross, Jehovah's Witnesses call it a stake. They don't believe it was a cross. So I was like, this doesn't seem right that we're supposed to take up this horrible, painful suffering to qualify for his love. If it's a sacrifice, right? It doesn't cost you something.
What was that click that made you decide that, you know what, I'm going to share my story?
Well, I realized that my poems had different stages of my deconstruction from doubting myself to getting angry to really hardcore questioning it. And I was like, I've always wanted to write a book, you know? So I guess I can add my memoirs in and I saw the correlation for me. For me, I feel like it was my childhood trauma, my parents that abandoned me and neglected me, my grandmother who criticized me and abused me that made me think this is what love looks like. And so I was thinking to myself, it seems like this wound, this poor understanding of what love is, made this perfect hollow for this religion to fall into because it mirrored all those things. It also required suffering. It also required performance, and it was also conditional love. And I was like, I feel like this is an important message to teach and that it would help and comfort people. And I thought about all the panic attacks that I had and how it would have been nice to read something like this when I was going through that to ease my mind. So I just decided to finally get honest. I told on a lot of people. They're not happy about it. It wasn't it wasn't to get anybody back. I just decided that sometimes you have to tell your raw story because it can help somebody else.
So, with that, what message or takeaway do you hope the readers of your memoir get from reading your book, especially if they are perhaps still in a high control group?
I would just hope that they come away with it realizing what real love looks like, that it doesn't make you carve yourself up, that it doesn't make you perform, that it doesn't expect perfection, and that it certainly doesn't threaten your life. It certainly does not hurt you. I just would want them to walk away having more self-love and not feel like they have to earn it anymore
And now
or
for my
suffer for it. Yeah,
and now
sorry.
now for my concluding question, the question that I ask all my guests is, Correen, what is your truth that heals?
I would say that we are all born worthy of unconditional love, a love that isn't tethered to fear. Our parents should have been our first safe, secure place, and if they weren't, the problem was them, not us. And lastly, a truly loving God would reflect those same qualities.
Thank you so much for sharing your truth that heals. And where can people in the audience get a copy of your book?
Right now, it's only available on Amazon. You can just look it up by title. Jehovah's Witnesses have a saying, best life ever, which is why I made the book Best Life After. And I'm working on an Audible and an ebook, but right now it's on Amazon. It's self-published.
Okay, so I'll be leaving a link in the show notes. So if anyone wants to go check out Correen's book, you can definitely check it out there. And Correen, are there any other links that you would like for me to add to the show notes?
You can find me on TikTok, 444 corelyse 888. And I also have a blog, www.charismally.com, where I write some extra stories.
So thank you so much. And to the audience, thank you for tuning in to this episode with the wonderful Correen Hardin. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.